All right. Week 5 in Intro to JavaScript. And in this time that I'm recording, I just today finished grading because of the holiday, the attendance and the first 4-1 that you needed to have done. And many of you look like you got the output. Many of you used AI, which was, by the way, the third step, supposedly. Do your own ask or look at code and then use AI. I noticed many of you started there, and that's not the idea. And I looked for commits. The key is, can you take a requirement and write code for it, even at the level ask of that? But it seemed like most of you got there. The important thing would be, do you understand the code and what it's doing and why you write it that way? So this is where reaching out for help can be very good. Because remember where we're heading. As a matter of fact, this week we take another step towards this concept of, now that we've learned it, let's actually implement it in a way that allows you to think about how to create something you would want. So in this week, we moved to the decision app, and I actually spent a moment just before now going to look at this, like the development project, the steps we're going to do. Well, it's a total of 20% of the class, but we'll have, I think, 7 steps that we do. So we start our first step this week, okay? Matter of fact, if I looked at the course here, and then after this, so step 6, week 6 we won't. Week 7 we'll have step 2, right? So it just rolls like that. It's every week until we get to a certain point where every other week, until we get to a point that then we do it every week. Okay, so we end up by the end, I believe it is step 7, 8. Okay, so it's 8 and then share out. So this project starts here, okay? And in doing this project this week and setting it up, what I realized was what we were going to need to do was really more than I would want to include in one step. So I broke it out. So in attendance, and that's why I'm talking about this here, you're actually going to work on the HTML and CSS. Okay. Now we got a little introduction, and I'll just tell you, you're not starting from scratch. You're starting from 4.2. Okay, but you're going to need to customize it, and I'll show you my output in a moment. Maybe first we'll do the directory setup and we'll look at that. Okay, and then I'll walk you through the concepts of what you need to do so you can get started on that. Because this is an important part. And before we can do the actual JavaScript, which we will do in that step 1, we're going to use our attendance to get started. Okay, so let me drop this for a minute. So this is your project, your decision-making app, right? The goal is to build a project, a web application, a form, right, that helps you make personal decisions. And you really want this to be something of your own life, something in your current, right? You see in your current world, right? Because these are the best projects to work on, and they will reinforce the patterns and the modular JavaScript and storing data in the browser, right? It should be unique. So I do not want to see common other applications out there like to-do lists or things like that. I really want you to think about this. And again, you'll see what I do in a minute. Okay. So we're going to, for the goal for the attendance is really to set up the project folder, okay, to set up the HTML and CSS and help you, just give you some guidance about what you need to do to modify the HTML, to modify the CSS, and to start your documentation. Because I did mine, but really where we'll focus is just getting a draft of this documentation done, but you'll need to have completed it by the end of step 1. And then this is how we'll grade, and we'll go over this in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to bring up my VS Code real quick. Okay, so what you're going to do is in your private repos, okay, so this is key, is in your private repos, you're going to create a subdirectory called my-app, no spaces, all lowercase. Then in that one, and again, see, now I have more weeks than you. You can see how far ahead I have code done. And in this case, you'll then create another directory inside of my app called step 1. Okay, there you go. right? So what you'll do then is you'll take the week 4 and you'll take all of the content from week 4. Now, I've already done this, so I'm not going to, but you will copy that into that step 1, okay? So that's your starting point for your app, okay? So that's what I'm saying. You're not actually having to start from scratch. You'll start from 4.2, which gives us all the way through display, okay? So I'm going to set this up in another location, but notice the other thing, and I'm going to do that for demonstration purposes, but notice how I have just my private repo open, because this can be, you want to make sure you don't get files confused and you don't modify this, because this 4.2 is going to be a place you can refer back to if you are having some struggle, you're trying to troubleshoot something and remember what it was originally named. This is going to really, you shouldn't really modify it once we move past it anyway, but for sure with this one. So hold on, I'm going to create that folder. Okay, so again, your folder setup should look like what I've described here. What I'm about to show you is just because I had to create another folder because I had already created the step 1. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I have my live server running, and now that I've done that, I now see the folder I created, but this is the one you will have. So in here, this is the ending, right, for step 4.2, and I'm going to go ahead and hit inspect. Right, so if this code works correctly, you should see displayed results. Oh, by the way, also, I did put a note on 4.2 that I had messed up and didn't completely update this correctly, so make sure you get that updated code. Okay, now, so in here, so now let's go back. So now that's your step 1, right? You have that set up, right? And this is what you did. So now you can commit. Now, what you're going to see on this one is I'm not going to give you specific commit messages, but this one kind of makes sense. Like what would be a commit message of your own for this specific step? Well, you've seen the ones I do, right? Setup complete or ready to start, something like that, that would indicate that. And you'll see me go through this, okay? As I go through this, you'll see this as a common thing that I say. So come up with your own message that indicates the work to this point. And not that you can't go back and do other commits later. You probably will. Make them specific to what you're doing. Okay, so now what you want to think about is what you're going to do, right? What kind of app are you going to, what kind of decision are you going to make in your app? And I'll show you mine. But also if you want, and this might be a good place to do this, is go down and look at the documentation, what you're going to need to think about, right? Because in this step today, you're just going to kind of say, maybe this is what I'm going to do. You'll have to refine it by or complete that process by the end of step 1. Right? So, but these are the things I'm going to want you to think about. Just, you're going to briefly describe the app, but just reading this gives you an idea of what I'm looking for in this, right? What's your decision focus, right? Input type. So this will be the HTML and then the color. So really these are the two that we're going to work on. But if you think about these, it will help guide you. And the thing I would tell you here, and I'm going to scroll back up, is that the more time you give this, because I actually did give this, I spent like 2 hours yesterday and an hour today getting mine to the point you're going to see it, which is actually at the end of step 1, but I'm just going to give you an idea. Okay, but the more you actually think about this, the better, the less rework you have to do, but just you want to get this done. So I'm going to bring up mine, right? So here's mine. So I ended up doing what does my workout look like today? So this is the completed HTML and CSS, but for this step, I'll just talk about the HTML. So what in the instruction I talk about is you need, right? So first we're going to design a form that for a specific personal decision in your life. You can, whatever thing you're facing or you come up with, I kind of threw some ideas. As a matter of fact, AI kind of helped me with this part. I ended up doing my workouts because it's a very important part of my life, but you're going to come up with something else. What things do you commonly make a decision about? This is, I think, where it works better. And then you'll come up with 3 to 4. I ended up going with 3, although I'm pretty sure I'm going to add a 4 later. Okay, I probably will. So if you do 3, you'll probably end up doing one later. We'll see. right? So you could have a text, you could have numbers, right? And we know how to do those. You could have check boxes, or you could have radio buttons. We've seen radio buttons. I ended up doing a drop down as well, and you could do some research on some others, like the text area if you wanted it. That one would be to me a little harder, but I went ahead and put it in here. Okay, so I'll show you mine. So I ended up using an input, just a regular input in this case, because what my workouts look like today is based on my energy score. So my energy score comes from my watch, tells me based on how well I slept. And by the way, that's the content up here. You know, how my previous day's activities, my recovery, all those things come up with a number. And I just kind of gave it a placeholder of 50, but typically it's much higher. But in that case, that's just an input field. And then I ended up, and again, you don't have to do it this way. I just did it, is to choose the day, because I also, in my decision, looked at what day, certain days I do certain things. So first, what was my energy score? What day is it? Then how does it feel right now? The outside temperature. So I looked at energy score, day, and outside temperature. Outside temperature in this case was a radio button, okay? So these were the three inputs I chose. So for this work, you're going to go through and modify the HTML, okay? So I'm actually going to bring up, so this is the starting point that you have, right? So you'll end up changing all the content here for your specific decision, right? So you can see how I did that here, right? So I changed, and again, I'm not talking about CSS yet. I'm only at this point talking about the HTML. So if you come in here and you hit inspect, this is where you can see it in here, but this is obviously where you can also open it in VS Code, okay? Now what you're going to want to think about is like making only changes related to, in this case, the input itself. Like if you were going to do something else for this input, then you would change this to whatever its ID is. And remember, these things are important, what you name them. And I did spend a little time thinking about this for mine, because I'm like, oh, I need to think about this when I do it. So I ended up naming my energy score. I gave it a min and a max value. But I'm just giving you the idea that you don't want to change the HTML structure. You just want to add or delete, in this case, the inputs, because again, we're starting with these inputs that are in here. And so in this case, if I was going to remove this one, I would remove it from filled set all the way in. And matter of fact, let me just move over to VS Code, because I think it'll be a little easier to see in there, right? So if I was down here, and I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. Okay, now this is the 4.2 starting, right? So let me go here. Food choices, home size. Yeah, so let's say I was going to actually get rid of home size, right? So I wasn't going to use that. Then I would delete that whole thing. Okay, so if I'm not using it, I get rid of it. Cool. Field set to field set is what I would do. And then if I was going to modify it, I would come up here and modify it. But I'd also think about, right, these IDs and how to make them consistent, right? And if I'm using radio buttons, which I did, right, in that case, I'd also want to make sure my name is, because that's when we use select document query selector all, and then we look for that. So you have to be consistent. So just study this. This really sees how well you have an understanding of at least just the basics of the HTML. Again, all you need to do here is you figure out what your content's going to be, right? So it's not going to be your diet. So in other words, all the content is focused with the starting point on the carbon footprint. You'll need to customize it for your decision. So giving your decision some thought, what things are you going to need? I'm showing you mine, energy score, day, which is a drop down, and outside temperature. Those were my three, okay? Okay. So then I just gave you some of that content. We just went over that, right? Give each input right. So this is the key too, and this is what I was talking about, a clear ID. Now, you do also need to keep the decision area display. Now, in this case, what I'm talking about here is this area that's hidden. You want to keep this in place, and you will end up modifying this. Again, ultimately, at the end of step 1, But the more modification you do and be consistent, the easier the step one, the rest of it becomes, okay? All right, so that's what that is. So then when you get done with this, then commit again with your own message, right? Whatever this makes sense to you, and you could just say, like I'd probably say here, update, created new inputs, refined or added my own IDs or whatever I felt was prominent for what I did, right? Okay, so actually I need to take this out because actually we are using this for the end of step one, so you don't want to remove that. Okay, so then I did that. So then I started looking at my colors. I looked at, and I ended up, and this is what I recommend in here, is you choose one of these sites to use a color scheme, and these are so cool because, I'm not a designer. I don't do it for a living. So I went through here and I looked at, and you can start the generator, and it'll just generate all these different, it gives you a little tutorial. I don't need it, right? So then, I don't think this is, let me go back, hold on. Because I think actually I went too far. Because it will just give you a list if you start the generate, or explore, there it was, explore trending palettes. So then you can go through here and kind of look what you want yours to look like. And what's nice here is you could go into individual ones, or you could right click and say open the palette. And then when you open the palette, what's cool is, wow, you get this, and you come down here and you can get like a hex number, RGB numbers. I mean, what's great is like if I did RGB and I'm like, okay, how about I use hex? Because now why would you use one or the other? I'll show you in a minute. But that would be a way to grab that color. Okay, so that'll be part of your documentation as well, that you're going to use that one. Okay, so now here's what you're going to do. You're going to do your background, your body background, your form background, your input borders, and your button colors. Okay, and also do your font family and maybe your font size, line height. Yeah, I'm okay with that one. Right, and then you could change your margin and padding if you want, but your basic styling of your elements consistent, right? So basically, here's what I did for mine. Is I go in and I start looking at, okay, I want to use a different font, first of all. And that was part of what you wanted to do. Well, there's this great thing called Google Fonts. And I love it because, it's fun. They have so many fonts, and it's a way to customize yours. I don't even remember which one I did now. I went through this and looked for a while and found one. But once you click on one, oh yeah, so then you can say get font. And so here's what it does. It actually says, right, how you can just get the embedded code so that you don't have to, just embed it. So check this out. All you have to do here to use this particular font is the following. You can just copy this and put it where? You're putting it in the head of your HTML, and you can do this before your CSS, okay? So if I was to put it in here, I could come up here and there, right? So I could include that. And the only other thing in the CSS I would need to do is notice how this starts here. All you'd have to do here is just take, and this is really how people do things. I'm not lying to you. Okay, see where it says font family? Then you could go look at here and you could change this to whichever one you want. And now you got to have both pieces in place. Now let's just see what that looks like. Let me see. Oh yeah, it did change it. I can already tell, right? So choose a new font. Okay, so I'm just giving you the idea of what you're going to need to change here. Okay, so now what's the other thing you're going to change? I also changed the text, of course. By the way, that's part of it. You got to change the text. I also changed the background. So for my color palette, I went in and I went, oh, it's in the body. And then I'm like, oh, okay. And check this out. This is where using DevTools is really helpful, not just with JavaScript. It is really helpful in general. So notice this. It's an RGB color. Oh, that background. So if I wanted to change that, this is it. And it even tells me if I click in here where that is in the CSS file. Okay, so I could click there and go look, and I could even find the line. Oh, it's right at the top, right? So again, using your tools here makes your life so much easier. Okay. Oh, actually, that was mine. Go back. That's mine. Just to go back and forth. Okay. So how would I do that? Then I'd go over to my CSS and here. Now, right? So this is where, notice how these numbers, right? So this is where, when I was showing you the color palette, right? When I was showing you the color palette, you can choose which one you want. So RGB. Oh, okay, I have that one. So which one did it want? It wanted, okay, so these are just hexes. So I could go here and I could, okay, so just give me the hex. Oh yeah, so I could just copy that. Oh, so I'd already copied, and I could come over here and then just paste it. Okay, let's see if it gives you the pound sign. Oh, it does. Okay, so then I've changed my background color. Okay, so again, you're just making it your own, right? And then I changed my font as well. I changed my color for in here. I'm going to actually end up changing my box because I'm going to make it more rounded. I haven't done all that. Let's see, what else did I do? Okay, so I did that. Let's go back to the instructions. So I'm just kind of walking you through. So the form background, the input borders, right? You could change those. I still need to do those, I realize, just talking about them now, right? And notice now if you change, and I changed this, I went inspect. I went into my field set and I'm like, oh, check that out. So I see that there's a border radius, right? So border radius is based on how this is. So I could actually just play around. Like if I made that, let's say if I made it bigger, and I could see how it looks here and then end up changing it in my HTML. So let's say I made it 15, right? So my border, oh yeah, there we go. So that made it bigger, but it's so light, it's kind of hard to see. So then I could change that border color. I could change some padding. And again, just, it's not going to hurt to just go play with this, okay? So let's go back here. Button colors, I ended up changing those, right? So if I came down here, I right-clicked, I hit inspect, and then found out, oh, okay, that's a secondary button. I think there was a primary button. Oh yeah, so here's the primary button. And so there it is. There's the code. If I clicked, it would show me. I could go find that in the CSS. Oh, it's in line 150. And then I could change those colors. But again, keep your palette in mind. Use your palette because somebody's already figured out what complements one or the other. Right? So this is where, honestly, you're just doing rapid development, right? And then, again, this is where you could ask for help if you needed it, but I'm just giving you, here's the things you're going to need to change. Okay, you could change your margins, you could change your padding. So how would you do that, right? So in this case, I would go up to the very tip top. Matter of fact, I'm going to hit here just to go back here. And then I would hit stop. Oh, actually, I'd come here, inspect. Because all that is setting on the body. So there's line height here, there's color, there's margin. So you could spend a bit of time definitely customizing this. I wouldn't change the flex. You'll learn more about that if you teach HTML and CSS on line items, but I would definitely look at some of these top ones because that's where a lot of this stuff is located. Okay, so now play with that, do another commit. Okay, now on this last step, like I said, you really have some content you could put in here, and you could draft what decision, right? What's your project title? So for me, I did do this, and for mine, right? So this is an app for daily workout routine, takes all these things into consideration. Here's my decision, here's my inputs. My number of inputs, there was and by the way, I just included a link to my palette color, which was helpful, okay? So again, the more you have fun with this, really it should be somewhat fun, my hope is here, but at least draft as much as you can. You can include definitely these two because at this point you've created your inputs, you've done your color palette. Now, how do I grade this? Did you set up everything? Did you customize your inputs? Did I no longer see the content for both the carbon footprint, not only on the page, but underneath it as well? And that's what I was talking about before. When you add your inputs, you also need to add your own IDs, which will end up making you change it in the JavaScript later. And really what we're seeing is how well you understand how we built this file. And this is just another way we're going to go through this. It's kind of like you're going to be exposed to it many times. Okay, that's the way we learn. So did you customize your HTML for your decision? Did you customize the CSS? Right? Did your commit messages align? Right? You don't need to complete. This is what I'm saying. So this file is this is the only file, by the way, that doesn't meet the lowercase no spaces. The README is always all capitalized. It's just a standard, right? But you'll end up completing this by the end of step 1, right? So what you can do here, I said but twice, but you will need to complete it by the end of step 5, but that's 10 points. So you can see how this is graded, and then you get 20 points for applying. You can ask for help, or you can tell us about your decision, right? This is cool. Next week, not this week, next week we're going to share a print screen of what you ended up with, okay? So and I'll show you how to do that next week. But mine does work. Again, this is the end of, if I was to do this and I was to say it was too hot outside, it would tell me do a regular walk inside. Do a regular day by walk inside. It's not the best. I still got to work on my decision. You'll hear me talk about the JavaScript in step 1. Okay. Hope this gives you an overview of what you need. Please reach out for help. This is a great time to ask for help. If you need it, remember there's a really important piece that you're doing, which is when you're creating your own inputs. I'm going to end with this because that's how important it is that you come up with your own names. And those are going to be really important when we go to the JavaScript, so be consistent. Choose 3 to 4 inputs that you're going to have for your decision. Yes, they can change, but they would need to be changed by the end of step 1. Okay. All right. I know it's a little longer. I'll talk to you later.